Welcome to the Gold Standard here on the 440 Sports Network, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages. Good to be back in the States watching hockey. Good for the Nashville Predators to be back in Nashville at some point. That is Emma Lingan. I am Braden Gall. Emma, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon. I am jealous of your trip overseas, but happy to have you back.
It is great to be back. It is always very jarring to get back to Nashville. And there's lots of positives to be back in Nashville. My own bed, barbecue, craft beer, all of which you can get, some of which you can get at Sinkers Beverages, by the way.
I don't think you can get beds there.
But I meant all the craft beers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can get all the great local, amazing Nashville craft beers, which is way better than all the beer they have in most European cities, which is kind of strange to think about. But we do beer way better here, frankly, than they do over there. But it's jarring watching people try to cross streets on crosswalks in Nashville. The deference for pedestrian life in Europe is just, I don't know, it's just so much better than it is here. It's like, whoa, that person almost died crossing Gallatin Pike. What are we doing?
Well, it would also help if the pedestrians here would actually pay any attention to the walk signs and whatnot, not just treat the roads.
I'm talking about the ones where it is state law to stop at a crosswalk in the middle of a road, not at an intersection.
Oh, okay.
And I watched a woman with a stroller have to wait for 4 cars to go by on Monday after I got back. And I'm like, that just would never happen in a European city where they're just like, they are trained to stop. And I don't know, Emma, protect human life. It's just a crazy idea. Crazy idea. Anyway, great to be back. Nashville Predators are back in Nashville. They will get back on the ice with an enormous game against Seattle on Thursday night at Bridgestone Arena. That game turning into a must-win for both teams. In fact, that's kind of the theme of the last 15 games for the Nashville Predators. Must win for both teams. They're going to play, I think, 10 times they're going to play against teams between like 4 and 11 in the Western Conference standings. So a big part of this is what we've seen over the last 20 games, which is the last 2 months, what we saw from UC Saros on Tuesday night, what we saw in the win against Winnipeg, and frankly, the dichotomy of being 2 points out of a wild card spot, but also 26th in the NHL. They are the 7th pick in the draft right now today, which is sort of a really crazy place to be. So anything could happen for this team down the stretch. We'll get into what those things are, what we want to see, what you guys want to see as fans, etc. UC Saros versus the defense. We are in the portion of the UC Saros story arc where like we're reaching the point where we start blaming the defense. Again,
I've been there. I've been in that point of the story all season. Right. So welcome. Join me, please.
Right. A bunch of young players are stepping into roles. I think this is what a lot of fans wanted to see is let's see what Ryan Ufko can do. Let's see what Matthew Wood can do. And some of these players are elevating their games and starting to develop, and that's what you want to see. And then, of course, has there been a change of heart with Governor Haslam and ownership? It seems like with leaks and rumors saying that they're okay with the rebuild, that was different than what they said to us 6 weeks ago at a press conference. So why has the change of heart happened, and what will it mean for decisions coming in the summer? If you want to get involved, please do so. Of course, you can get involved in the comment section. YouTube, thumbs up, notifications turned on. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitter, please share the product and tell somebody about the Gold Standard as well as Lower Broad Hockey. Sinkers Beverages, man, it's great to be back shopping at a local liquor store where I know all the things that are on the shelves. Yes, the wine in Europe is spectacular, but I like my craft beer, I like my bourbon, and I can get that here at Sinkers Beverages. You can have the booze delivered directly to your house, so do not drive, of course. Make sure you have them deliver. Search Uber Eats, Sinkers Beverages, and they'll deliver it right to your house. Let's see here. National Anna says, Shea drives, badly misses. He missed a lot of pucks behind the net on Tuesday night against Winnipeg. It wasn't a great game for 76. We'll get to that. Matthew Wood ruining Brady Shea's tank job. Man, right out of the gate, Brady Shea taking it on the chin. Let's see here. I want to read you your comments, Kevin, before I just put them up there. Look, do you know how hard it is to watch Netflix and the crosswalks at the same time while driving? I did see, I was at a stoplight the other day. This was a couple of weeks ago. And it was a Tesla, Emma, in front of me. And he was playing solitaire on the screen. And I was like, I sure hope that doesn't work when the car's in drive. And I don't think it did. But I was just like, this is where we are now. We get to a stoplight, we put the car in park so we can play solitaire, because we can't just sit and think for 30 seconds about things that are going on in our lives. We have to be touching something and distracting ourselves.
Yeah, you let the intrusive thoughts win. You just got to stay busy. I mean, even like I don't drive a Tesla, but in the entertainment system, like certain things it won't let you do when the car's in motion. So I would
Right.
imagine it wouldn't let you play solitaire. I would hope not.
I was glad that I saw him do something, and then I don't even know what it's obviously not a it's not a shifter on the steering in a
And then he
Tesla.
goes to roll the window down. Yeah.
But the solitaire disappeared on the giant panel. I was comforted by that, at least a little bit. All right, so a lot of stuff to get to today on the show. I just want to start I want to get into these 20 games because they are. That's what I find really interesting. They win last night against Winnipeg. We can talk about the game in particular if you want. They are 30. I'm going to lay out some basic stuff here. They're 30, 28, and 9. They're 2-3-1 on the road trip. But in the last 20 games, which is almost exactly 2 months, January 17th, they are 7, 8, and 5. They've still only won, I think, 6 games in regulation in this span. They are giving up 3.7 goals per game, which is also where their expected goals per game is at, which means they're just not good on defense at all right now. 3.2 goals for in that span is pretty good offensively for the Nashville Predators in general. The power play's been pretty solid, near 30% during this stretch. Penalty kill's been okay, under 20%, but still not one of the best during that stretch. The veterans even hit a little bit of a hiccup here, right, where Forsberg hadn't scored on the road trip. O'Reilly has only had 5 points in the last 10 games. Stamkos has only got 4 points or 5 points, I think, in the last 8 games. There are huge games coming up. Obviously, the third period against Winnipeg was an enormous game for some. And so this is ultimately where I want to start. Should you just be looking at this team 2 points out of a wild card spot versus 26th in the NHL? They are picking 7th in the draft right now if the season ended today. And people who want the team to tank and to truly rebuild are saying that's what we wanted, as a top 7 pick, a top 5 pick. They are a couple losses away from being in the top 5 for only the 4th time in franchise history. They're also 2 points from a playoff spot. How should fans reconcile those two things together right now?
Well, it's pretty easy. You ignore the fact that they're 2 points out of a playoff spot. I mean, that's pretty much it. I think that, I've talked about it so many times this season. The schedule has been weird. It's been condensed. That means that momentum can shift in such a quick period of time for any team, not just for the Predators. And now you've got things like, in the Pacific Division, it's because we always talk about the Central being like, well, you got Dallas and Colorado, and then there's Winnipeg, who's now kind of technically back in the hunt again. St. Louis is doing the St. Louis thing where they're making a surge at the end of the year. But if you look more over at the Pacific Division, I think that's more interesting right now, because if you're looking at just at the West in general, the Oilers just lost Leon Draisaitl. Thank you to Ozzy Weisblatt for that. Sure, a lot of people in Edmonton would just love to shake his hand right now. But you've lost Draisaitl. Now you don't count them out of the playoffs. Obviously, they have games in hand, and they still have McDavid, and they could still make it. But I do think it makes everything a little bit more interesting. If Edmonton falls out of the playoffs, you could have a scenario where San Jose, Anaheim, and LA all make the playoffs, which I think would be fun. But a lot has to happen for that. And I think that it just goes to show you that, like, honestly, I don't see Nashville beating any of those teams, even if they were to make it into the playoffs.
No.
And so I think it just kind of comes back to the same thing we've been saying. It's like, look, winning hockey is fun. Meaningful hockey is fun. And I think that's how I look at this is really valuable experience for guys like Matt Wood and Ozzy Weisblatt and Ryan Ufko and Reed Schaefer. It's valuable experience for them to be Svechkov. It's valuable experience for them to be playing meaningful hockey games, which is exactly what they are right now. Because all those guys that are on the ice, they want to win. They want to win. And so, of course, they're trying to make the playoffs because that's literally their job. And if they have a chance to do that, of course, they're going to try.
Right.
So I don't think you can blame the players for trying to win when they're out there. But I think that as a fan and as an organization, if you just take a step back and you think like, okay, it's the player's job to focus on what's happening on the ice right now. Like they control what they can control right now. If you're just talking about the overall trajectory of the organization, like don't get mad at I mean, I know it was a joke, but just for the sake of argument, like don't get mad at Matt Wood for scoring goals. It's like that's what they're supposed to do. And I think if you want to get mad at someone, it would be, the front office, the organization, if they were to decide not to continue down this rebuild path. I still think there's a way, that's still the way they should go.
So I asked this morning on the boards at Lower Broad Hockey, I said, just give me y'all, how do you guys feel about this situation? Because I think even if you are, man, hey, we got into the playoffs and they get destroyed. Like I do think that is worst case scenario, which is weird to say. And I do think that the vast majority of people responding on Lower Broad Hockey were saying absolutely not. There's no benefit to going to the playoffs. But I do think it's smart to point out the value of actually important periods, shifts, games, situations. And that when there is a little bit of gravity on that situation and you're not down 4-0 in a game, that you're going to learn something different. You're going to get a different effort from yourself, from somebody else. You can be put into different situations. And I think, Matthew Wood being a center on the second line in games like Winnipeg, where you are in a tie game, both teams fighting for a playoff spot, because you're not going to ask players. This is also, I think, something that people have a difficult time reconciling. I actually do not, which is the coach and the player has a different job than a general manager. The general manager and the owner have to see big picture. They have to see around the next corner. The players and the coaches are just going to try to win every night. And I actually am okay with that. I don't think you can ask players and coaches not to try to win. So if you're 2-2 against a Winnipeg team on the road, long road trip, they're fighting for a playoff spot. They're playing really good hockey. It's been a back and forth game. You go up in the power play. They tie the game in the final minute. Then they go up, and then you tie it in the second period, and then you go up. Like those shifts for Matthew Wood in the third period on the road against Winnipeg are way more valuable than if you're just getting destroyed by Colorado at home 4-0. And like, you're not going to be learning as much. The shifts aren't as intense. Every movement. Now, I think Matt Wood needs to be a little bit more intense on some situations. I do think he's more engaged as a center, but neither here nor there. I digress. And so I think there's value in, and this is, I think, maybe the beauty of the situation that I'm trying to grasp. It's almost like Predators fans need to be very happy that the Western Conference, in particular the Pacific Division, are so bad, and that the Eastern Conference is so good. I just want everyone to know the Predators have a better record than one team in the Eastern Conference. One team. And so the whole Eastern Conference is better. The whole Western Conference is worse. And what it's creating is meaningful games while also potentially getting a top 5 pick. That should be viewed as like, oh, well, we get our cake and eat it too a little bit. Because as long as they don't win enough games to make the playoffs. Because if you make the playoffs, then you jump out of the lottery system and you're into that 16, and then all of a sudden you have no chance at a top 10 pick. But if you just finish outside, you're going to be like in the 6, 7, 8 range of the draft. As long as, and again, looking at the percentage, by the way, of playoff, making the playoffs. This is ESPN. I'm not saying it's the end all be all. So I'm not saying it's the thing we need to base it on. I'm just saying as a hypothetical here, it has San Jose with a 57% chance of making the playoffs. That's a big number, I thought, considering how dynamic these teams are. The Kings at 30%, Seattle at 17%, Nashville at 4%, Winnipeg at 3%. So that game last night happens, and it probably is a 1% change of opportunity. Winnipeg would be at 4, and Nashville would be at 3, I guess.
Yeah.
They're going to play all these teams, so you could win a few of them. But I think that's the way I'm choosing to look at this is squeeze as much value out of games and shifts as you can while keeping a top 10 pick. And I think that's the goal that the team has to have the rest of the way, even though you can't ask the coach to load manage Steven Stamkos.
Well, and like you said, the job of the GM is different than the job of the coach and the players. The coach and the players' job is to try to win the game that's right in front of them, and they're not going to deviate from that. And so I think the good thing is, like you said, they're going to play all those teams. They've still got games left against teams like Minnesota. It's going to be a challenge for them down the stretch here. And I think that, I don't think that they're going to just be like, well, pack it in. Like, we're not, because that's just not what they do. That's not what professional athletes and coaches do. I think you have to look at, like you said, there's still value to it. There is value in those players, those young players, especially playing the meaningful hockey. Again, I made the comparison last week. I think it was last week, looking back at the 22-23 season. That was the same situation you had, where you had like Evangelista, Cody Glass, Tommy Novak, Afanasyev. Those guys were getting that experience, keeping them in the playoff race, but not actually making the playoffs. It was like the perfect scenario. I think that's kind of what you root for in this case too.
Very good comment here from Josh saying it would be great to save some miles on Saros. We will get to Saros. 51 starts already for him. I could see him being one that you might want to load manage. Otherwise, you'd be asking a general manager who's leaving to tell the coach, who's his guy, to load manage players that neither of them are probably going to coach or general manage next year. So I don't think you can ask that. I don't think you can ask them to do that. But you are seeing it. You're seeing Toronto and Florida start to think about this stuff and say, well, we're not going to win it this year. Let's take care of our players for next year. Let's see here. Matthew P. Houston says Matthew Wood getting the hat trick in a loss to New York was perfect. Kid was scoring while the Preds were losing. The last few games have been perfect. I think that's referring to the road trip here. They do finish 2-3-1 on the road trip. It would have been, 1-3-1 going into last night. Matt Wood can score all he wants. I just don't want to see the Tyson Yost of the world score. Fair enough. Shawnee says, as a season ticket holder, I'd love to see playoff hockey, but I know I'm in the minority. Self-aware, Shawnee. That's good. Edmonton fans are already crying and swearing vengeance as if they didn't spend the whole game trying to kill Ozzy for that legal hit. Guess the Predator killer isn't so scary after all. Yeah, they were pretty much after him the whole. It was a very strange hit on Draisaitl. Out for the year. Very strange. It looked like a fairly normal, innocuous hit to the side of the shoulder into the boards. I do think he it wasn't knee to knee, but it certainly looked like he buckled his knee when he hit him. And so if that's a dirty hit, I didn't see it.
I don't know. I think that honestly, a lot of what I've been seeing is that people aren't even necessarily arguing that the hit was dirty, but it was more just like, you took out Draisaitl and for that you must pay. And like, I think it's, you look at it in comparison to what happened with Austin Matthews and Radko Gudas, and that's been a whole controversy with, should Gudas have gotten a longer suspension because he took a knee-on-knee hit, knocked Matthews out for the season, and he didn't even get an in-person hearing for it. And a lot of people are upset about that. So granted, it's Austin Matthews and it's Toronto, but still, I just feel like you don't see as much about like Ozzy's hit being reckless. I think it just, it happens. It's a violent game. Sometimes you just, get hit in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's that.
The Nashville Predators will play Anaheim twice, Edmonton. No, they will not play Edmonton. Excuse me. Anaheim twice, Vegas once, Utah once, Seattle once, the Kings twice, and San Jose 3 times. Those are teams 4 through 11 in the Western Conference. 10 of those 15 games will be against those teams. 7 of the 15 games left on the schedule are against teams currently sitting in the wild card chase. That's LA, San Jose, Seattle, Nashville. They just played Winnipeg. They're going to play Minnesota also, which isn't included in any of this as well. So, look, the games are ahead of them, and it will be decided. I don't have a problem with the players and the coaches trying to win. If nothing else, you are auditioning for the next general manager, so you cannot expect them to not try. But I do think we can talk about Saros here. And that is like UC Saros came into the game last night with a 6.4 goals saved above expected in this chunk of time that I'm talking about, these 2 months since January 17th. He had a 2.2 goals saved above expected last night. He was brilliant on Tuesday night, facing a ton of shots from all over the place. That means in these last 20 games, of which he has started 14, he is at 8.6 goals saved above expected, which is more than 0.6 per game. He is saving more than half a goal per game for his team. You can say what you want about UC Saros. You can say that he's not a top 10 goaltender. You can be worried about the contract in the last 3 years if you want to, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, the reason this team is giving up 3.7 goals per game over this stretch is because that is what they're expected to give up, not because of the goaltender, because the defense has played so poorly in front of him. Unless, of course, you're Brady Shea and you're playing against Connor McDavid, I guess. But last night, like, Barron is just, it's so hard to watch Barron play in his own zone. Brady Shea is losing puck battles behind the net constantly. Ryan Ufko is a breath of fresh air, especially on offense, but he's not exactly a dominant stopper on defense either. Haig and Perbix are fun to watch if you don't mind a slower version of the product. It's the defense, guys. It's the defense. It's not the goaltender. It's the defense. We've reached that portion of UC Saros' story arc. Every year we get to this place, and it's the defense.
Or if you're me, you just stay in that point of the story arc all year, because that's what it is. I don't mean to, and I've said, I think I've been pretty balanced I mean, we all know how I feel about UC Saros, but I think I've always been fair and balanced in saying, like, I'm not going to absolve him of all blame, that I'm not going to try and argue that he should be a Vezina finalist this year. Of course not. But, like, I think that he gets way too much, because where I thought you were going with this, when you were saying, oh, we've reached the point in the story, where I thought that was headed, because I've heard this just from kind of some of the national talking heads, which is that we're going to start blaming his size, because that's a point in the story arc we reach every year. It was like, well, he's an undersized goalie, as if he has shrunk, like, from the beginning of the year to now.
I feel like that's like an off-season chapter of the story. I feel like it's always like, well, can he hold up?
No, it's in any time that he is on national TV or playing against a Canadian market, when there's more, and so I think that you started to see that a little bit more, but people are saying, well, that's the problem. He's an undersized goalie. Teams, they shoot high on him. They like to go high blocker, and that, you can't get him. And it's like, okay, but that he's always been the same size. He hasn't shrunk. And so I think that that's where, again, I point to the defense. When you have a good defense in front of you, then your size shouldn't be that big of a factor. It shouldn't be that big of a problem, because when you are, people saying, like, well, he's undersized, he can't see the puck. Yeah, because his own defense doesn't get out of the freaking way. And so he can't see. And so I think that you have to, as a defense, you have to be aware of that. Like, you have to be aware of that. And I'm not taking all of the blame off of his shoulders, but I think that there is definitely something to be said for the quality of the defense that has been playing in front of him ever since, really in this Andrew Brunette era, that it hasn't gone well. And I think that Saros is incredibly athletic. He's really explosive. He's really one of the more athletic goaltenders I've seen in the NHL. And I think when you are undersized, you have to explode and move from side to side really quickly. But I just think that, we're starting to see it more, that, like, what he can do. I mean, it's not even see it, because we knew he could do it. We're just being reminded.
So here's how I would describe this story arc. You tell me what you think, because it's not just like, who are you blaming? It's also, well, he always starts out a little slow, right? It always starts out, his splits in October and November are 286 career goals against, 294 career goals against, 903, 902 save percentage. Those are among his lowest numbers. So he kind of starts out slow in October, November. Then he just hits this, like, everyone's like, oh my God, he's spectacular. And that's like the month of December and a little bit of January. And it's like, oh my God, look how good he is. Maybe he is a top 10 goaltender in the NHL, blah, blah, blah. Then it like he starts to struggle again and people blame him first. And then we start to realize, oh, wait a second, it's a little bit more of the defense. And so I just think it's the exact same story every year.
Except some people never realize that. They are stuck
Fair.
It's all Saros.
I'm referring to intelligent people who listen to this show. And
yes.
But it's always like, man, okay, look,
he's the proud of us.
He's a slow starter, and then he plays really well in December, kind of in the middle of the year. And then as it gets tougher on the team, which has been very bad at defense under Andrew Brunette, I think if we want to say we have enough data on Andrew Brunette, the only two things I would say about Andrew Brunette that I think for sure are that his teams take a long time to get going and they're inconsistent, and that the defense has not been good. He's not a good defensive coach, at least right now. And I don't know if that means he's not focused on it, or his system affects the defense, or they haven't had very good talent, which is also part of this equation. But
I also think that Andrew Brunette might not be. I feel more comfortable saying this now because I feel like we've had enough time. I don't know that Andrew Brunette is the best position to be a head coach in the NHL. I think he would make. Well, it's not new. It's just one I haven't really been comfortable voicing yet because I was trying to collect the data a little bit more. But I think all of these things that you're saying, it does kind of fit this idea, which is that I think that he is a really good specialist. I think if he can specialize in one area, like an offensive specialist, if you're going to make him an assistant, because I mean, that's what he was in Florida. That's what he was in New Jersey and in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And
power play's been very good. Power play's been very good.
Yeah. And so I'm just saying, I think that some, and it's not just him, and it's not to criticize him or say like he's a bad coach. I just think that he, it's maybe not his calling. Being a head coach, maybe not his calling. He might be like an iffy head coach, but he could be a really freaking good assistant coach.
I think the the last two seasons, and I'm just doing this off the top of my head, but if you gave me the top 6 defensemen in minutes over the course of the season, last year a little bit more injuries, this year a little bit more just tied to like who they went and got, I would argue that these last two collections of defensemen in the last 2 seasons are probably the least talented that they've ever had in my life that I can remember, dating back to like the OG first 5 or 6 years of play. So that's got to be a part of it. Like, you got to have great players if you want to have a great defense. So I'm not going to completely absolve the general manager or the talent or the players or whatever. I think all of it kind of factors in, but they're just not a good defensive team under Andrew Brunette, period. And so I think that at this point, I think it's safe to say that. I just think it's funny that we have this. I'm kind of like, it feels like we get to mid-March every year and it's like we're having the same debate. Is it the defense or is it the goaltender? And it feels like it always starts out saying, no, it's Saros slow. Then it's Saros playing pretty well. Then when the season starts to struggle, it's, oh, is it Saros' fault? Oh, no, actually, it's the defense's fault. And it's the same story every year. And in the middle of that conversation is, why is he leading the NHL in shots faced, in goals allowed, and in saves? Why does he have 51 starts? If he's undersized, isn't this the period of time where you should give the guy a break? He's not a kid. Give the guy a break. I feel like, again, same conversation we've had about UC Saros for the better part of 5 seasons now. And it's this, if we're doing the same things, this is insanity at this point.
I don't know. I think you could throw in this year too. What's unique about this year is we got to see him in the Olympics, and I thought that he was spectacular in the Olympics. And I think that
starts.
But even like looking at, because sometimes you got to get out of the Nashville bubble a little bit and just, we watch them all the time and we have our own takes and opinions. But I think like obviously on the international stage got a lot more attention there, and none of the narratives with obviously Finland when they lost and they ended up winning the bronze medal, but when they lost the game before that, no one virtually no one was even listing Saros on like the top 5 reasons that they lost that game. Like no one was pinning that on him, and people were saying, well, they didn't score enough. Well, it was the defense. Well, it was whatever. And I just think that that was unique perspective to see from the kind of, the analysts and the people who don't watch him as often as we do. And I think it was a little bit more, kind of acknowledgement that, hey, at the end of the day, it is a team sport. And yes, it's his job to stop the pucks, but the goals that he did let in, were a lot the result of poor defense in front of him.
By the way, according to his splits for his career, the best month of the season, 251 goals against and a 919 save percentage is March. So he's in the middle of the best part of his year. He's also on pace for the worst season of his career. 314 goals against, 894 save percentage. Again, leading the league in goals allowed at 154, 51 starts. Not the number one, but he also has led the NHL in starts 3 times in recent memory. Last year was the first time he kind of stopped doing that. So, I just find it interesting. I find it funny that this is the same exact conversation about UC Saros. But I think if you look at in these 20 games where he has played 14 of them, and they are basically a 500 team, 7, 8, and 5, he has stolen 0.6 goals per game. Per game. Almost 9 goals in 14 starts that UC Saros has saved. It is not the goaltender's fault. Can he be better? Of course. Can they all be better? Of course. But it is when you have an expected goals against of 3.8 over a 2-month period of time, that is just consistently below average defense is what that is, which is among the worst in the NHL, by the way. I want to say they're like 28th in expected goals against each on average over that span. So they are the 26th best team in the NHL, Emma. They are the 26th best team in the NHL, and that's what they should hopefully finish as.
Yeah, I think I smiled when you brought up the defense, like in comparison to the rest of the NHL. I had to chuckle the other night when they were playing Edmonton. And listen, I love Willie and Mace. I think that they're great, and I understand what their job is and who they work for. But
Captain Sunshine and Admiral Rainbows.
Admiral Rainbows, that's good. I think that with the amount that they kept going on and on about how terrible Edmonton's defense is, and they're not wrong. Edmonton's defense is horrible. But if you looked at the numbers, no, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but I want to say at the time I looked at it and the goals against for each team was like or goals allowed for Edmonton, it was 3.37, and Nashville was like 3.35. So like they're basically the same, but they did not mention a peep about Nashville's defense unless it was to compliment them, which obviously I understand it's essentially state-run media. I get it, but
right.
It was funny to me. It was just funny.
Kevin, this is not nice. This is not nice, Kevin, what you're saying on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube.
It's Admiral Rainbows and Captain Sunshine.
Captain Sunshine. But they are paid to be senior positivity correspondents. Like they are paid to do that.
No, I'm not criticizing them for it. I just had to laugh. I thought it was funny.
Yeah. By the way, for the season, I just pulled this up just to double check. For the season, Edmonton 3.36 goals against per game. That's 27th in the NHL. The Nashville Predators 3.39 goals against per game, 28th in the NHL. They are identical.
Yeah.
For the season.
Yeah. So it was just funny because like they weren't wrong. Edmonton's defense is quite bad, but they just couldn't say that second part out loud, which is that the Predators defense is just as bad.
And again, I'm okay with that. Like I'm not saying you're not okay with it. Like that's what they're paid to do is to be part of the team. They're on the team. They're literally paid by the team. It's fine.
That's why I
don't have a problem with that.
Again, I've been on their side. I get it. So I don't have an issue with them saying it. I just think, you have to laugh when you're, an objective third party and you just kind of look and it's oh, yeah.
That's cute. All right. Before I ask you about young players and the governor's potential change of heart, I want to get to Sinkers Beverages, which is putting on, I believe it's our 5th annual charity NFL draft party event thing. That's an official title. That's coming up, of course, on April 23rd. We're gonna have a really cool event on Thursday evening. We're gonna have a watch party with an open bar and free food. It's gonna be great. We've already got the location. That will be announced, I believe, on Thursday, tomorrow morning. If you are listening to this on Wednesday and you're live with us, you'll be able to get it on a football show. Myself and Nick Suss. Also brought to you by Sinkers Beverages. This is a local company that loves Predators hockey, loves Titans football, loves Nashville SC, and we put on a charity event to help the kids of Middle Tennessee every single year. It's going to be even cooler and bigger and better this year. So you'll be able to buy tickets to Thursday night's kind of watch party, and then we're going to have a really special, private, exclusive event on Saturday night that's going to feature a lot of cool stuff from a lot of different people, including Sinkers Beverages. There might be some really cool gift bags for everybody, like a really high-end whiskey glass and maybe a bottle of something delicious. So just going to be and all the money goes to charity. All the money goes to help the kids of Middle Tennessee, our Kids Foundation. So stay tuned for that. You can follow us on the socials, please. Subscribe on YouTube, as well as stay tuned to the live shows, because we'll put the links to purchase tickets in the chat. So I'd love to have you guys, any Preds fans who want to come hang out at the NFL draft party. We're just going to be sitting around having a good time. Brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, all a part of taking care of kids in Middle Tennessee. Again, for the 5th year in a row. I think we're around $10,000 donated over the course of the 4 years of the event. So I think actually that might be a really low number now that I think about it. I think we're well above that. So all of that because of you guys who come out and support us. So please do so again. Check out a football show on Thursday morning. We'll have links to the first party. Should be up and running on Thursday morning. So stay tuned for all of that. Okay. I want Ryan Ufko 4 points in 6 games since being called up. Svechkov 4 points in 6 games since being called back as well. Matthew Wood has 10 points in his last 13 games. He never really went down per se, kind of did. But by and large, Svechkov looks far more engaged and active. Ryan Ufko looks like the player I think fans wanted him to be, which is, I think, better than most people expected, myself included. Matthew Wood looks far more engaged as a center, playing against higher level competition, but with higher level competition. There are still moments where I feel like he needs to finish plays with a little bit more aggressiveness and physicality, but his scoring skill is just absolutely filthy. And it seems like that draft pick from Barry Trotz, the first one he ever made, is turning into a really nice building block piece for the future. What do you make of the young kids actually getting these opportunities? Svechkov back, Ufko up, way different than he was last year. Reed Schaefer, Ozzy Weisblatt. This is what people wanted when they sold 4 pieces at the deadline. They have gotten that, and I think there's been some results. Who do you like the most, and who do you think's putting themselves in a position to stick next year?
Well, I know you said, like, obviously he didn't get called up after the deadline. He was already up, but I mean, Matt Wood has really kind of exceeded my expectations this year, even dating back to training camp. I mean, he just came out the gate like he wanted it. You could tell he really wanted it. I agree with you. He's been very engaged. I think as a center, that has worked out quite nicely. I think that is, though, a happy accident. Not saying that that an accident that he played center. I mean, we knew that he had played center in the past, but I think that the Predators kind of have to treat this. I think, again, this is where it comes into the GM has a different job than the coach and the players, but you treat this as house money. It's like, oh, we have a talented young player who can play center, but let's not use that as a reason to be like, oh, we don't need to shore up our center depth, because yes, we do. You have no one after him and Svechkov, and then Hala, who's done this year, and O'Reilly, who's done next year. And so you need to, still focus on that being a priority. So I've been really, I don't know. I've been really impressed with him just really all season. I think Ufko looks, also, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought he was better, not better than what I expected him to be eventually, but better than what I expected him to be right now.
I agree. And based on what we saw last year from limited time. So
very limited. So I was trying not to read too much into that, but yeah, and it was a different situation last year. I get it, but he has looked, offensively, like you said, a breath of fresh air. And I think that we've been a little scarred recently because you think outside of Roman Yossi, like you put him in his own category, but I think for the most part, when you think the modern offensive defenseman is usually not much of a defenseman. And it's mostly just offense. And I think you start to think, oh God, it's like an Evan Bouchard type or even a Justin Barron, but I think that he's disciplined. He's not a big body. He's not gonna be, stopping all the shots, but I think that he is very disciplined in the decisions that he makes. He looks like he doesn't panic when he gets the puck on his stick. He knows exactly what to do. And that is really all you can ask for in a young player.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a first-round pick prospect.
Yeah.
This is not a guy who was expected to be a top pairing defenseman. He has been way better than I think his prospect profile has indicated. He's way better than he was last year. And if you look at, Kevin's talking about Nick Blankenburg. He's been in 3 games, no points. Still has more points as a Predator than Brady Shea. Just want to point that out. In 15 less games, Brady Shea is going to take a lot of shots today on the show. Sorry, Brady. I just think you have to have for this whole thing to work, and this does kind of get us into the conversation around Governor Haslam and why has he changed his mind, or why would he be comfortable with the rebuild? For it to work, the whole thing, all the first round picks, all the draft picks, the trading of players at the deadline, a couple of different years, you're going to have some marquee premium prospects hit. Brady Martin, Matthew Wood, Tanner Molendijk, Cameron Reed, etc. Because you're going to miss on a few too. If Kemmel never pans out, you're going to miss on a few high-level picks. But you need the guys who you didn't expect to be a part of this plan to become part of the plan. And while Ryan Ufko might have been one of the better prospects at defense in the system, let's say last season, I don't think people were penciling him in as a top 4 defenseman, as a permanent building block piece, the way we all were with Tanner Molendijk, for example. And so you got to have some guys that surprise and turn into something you didn't expect. And if Ryan Ufko can be that, great. I don't know if he's a top 4 defenseman, but if he's
honestly, I would say now to a lesser degree, because this isn't a player that you drafted. But you just mentioned Blankenburg. I'd kind of put him in that category too. It's he was a pleasant surprise. No one expected him to be a factor. He was. You ended up being able to flip him at the deadline for something, which I think is not anything we would have expected even a year ago. So I just think that there is, again, it's one of those things that, yes, you need the surprise, you need surprises to happen, but you also kind of need the guys who you expected to be good to also be good. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm a little, I don't panic. I'm not a panicky person, when it comes to this stuff, but I am a little, I'm watching Kemmel with one eyebrow raised right now. I'm not, and I've never been totally sold on Kemmel. As a talent. Of course he's talented. He's got a tremendous shot. I think he's really skilled, but I just don't know that. I feel like I've never quite been as high on him as a lot of people have been.
You can't expect every first round pick to hit. So there is going to be some excess there, whether it's 2 out of 10 or 3 out of 10, or I would probably say more like your top 50 picks. Anything in the first half of the second round is probably equivalent to a late first round pick. So they have about 12 guys that they've taken or that were acquired that were either drafted in the first round or early second round. And if you put those 12 guys together, you probably need 8 of them to be starting players. And if one of them that doesn't hit is Kemmel, then that's what it is. So that's going to happen. But you do need to have the 4th round pick. You need to have you need to find Roman Yossi. You need to trade for Philip Forsberg. You got to find some other guys some other ways.
I just think it's funny because Kemmel, it seems has been the one name that everyone has been oh, that's their next guy. People were penciling him into the opening night roster this year. And I was the one who was I don't know. And I think
it's because he was early. He was one of the earlier first round picks that could be
Right, but
available,
it's
and he
like
has a great
people
shot, and I think that's what does
yeah,
it.
but people just, like, they learned that information and they just put him in, like, "Okay,
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
the guy, he's the next guy," and I was like, I mean, I think he can be a piece, sure, but I don't think
Yeah.
that he's gonna be
Yeah.
that offensive cornerstone that maybe people had hoped he would be,
Well, and
which is fine.
Svechkov, like, and this is a really good point here. If Wood can stick at center from Kevin, if Wood can stick at center, that changes the whole dynamic of the Preds' depth down the middle. So if Svechkov, for example, who also has a high level of pedigree as a draft pick, if that's a guy
He's
that can,
looked a lot better since
he
coming
has,
back too.
and I don't like part of the thing that we need to discuss with UFCO is like you need your premium picks to hit and be premium players. You need your middle tier prospects to hit and be middle tier contributors, and you need your lower tier prospects to hit and become better than you expected, kind of depth pieces that also produce. And if Wood can play center, second line with Martin as a center, and then you have Svechkov as a center, all of a sudden he doesn't have to be a second line center. He can be a third line center, and all of a sudden Svechkov as a third line center feels a lot more palatable when Matthew Wood's a second line center. Ufco, you don't want Ufco to. You're not trying to make Ryan Ufco a top line defenseman. Maybe not even a second line defenseman. But if he's a really good third pairing defenseman, well, you've got to build those blocks somehow. And so I do think finding those guys is the goal in the next 15 games. I think that's, and it seems like you're starting to see that. And that's what all of you have been clamoring for quite some time. So that brings us to the last part of this, which is Governor Haslam. The reports, the rumors are kind of swirling out there that he is totally open and okay with a rebuild this offseason. And the first thing, and I said this to Adam on the Lower Broad Hockey Substack podcast that we did on this week. And like, why did he change his mind with public comments from just 6 weeks ago saying this is not the direction I want to go, to why is it now, even though it's leaks and back channeling and reports surfacing that he's okay with this? Number one, if you watch the team long enough, I feel like that's the only conclusion you'll get to. But I think this is what's happened. You tell me what you think. I'm going to call this informed speculation, but I feel pretty good about it. They're conducting interviews right now with assistant general managers in particular. And if there are not interviews necessarily formal, but like they are having conversations, lots of different types of conversations with lots of different types of candidates. And if you are worth a salt at all as a candidate, you are presenting your plan during those conversations, during those meetings. Here's what my plan is. Here's what I would do with the coach. Here's what I would do with the players. Here's what I would do with contracts. Here's what I would do with draft picks. Here's what I would do with the prospects and the farm system and the assistant general manager and the scouting department. You have to have a plan for all of that stuff if you are a viable, legitimate candidate for the job. And when you present that, if you are a shrewd, high-level candidate, I cannot imagine many of the really good candidates are coming to Bill Haslam in these conversations and saying, I think we should go for it. I think we should stick in the mushy middle. I think we should re-sign, spend a bunch of money in free agency and keep Andrew Burnett. Like my guess is that every conversation is probably around moving players in the offseason, continuing to get more talented and younger, probably changing the coach and the front office, and here's my plan for that. And if you hear that enough times from candidates that you would like to hire for the job, eventually a smart person changes their opinion. That's what I think has happened over the course of the last 6 weeks.
And I think if that is in fact the case, I think it even more so points to the need for what we've been saying for ever since Barry Trotz announced he was stepping down, which is that you need outside voices in this organization. And I think that that's what you're seeing now if you're interviewing or even having those informal conversations. Like you said, any candidate, qualified candidate, is going to come in and say, yeah, no, I think just run it back. Keep going. Like, no, come on.
Who's going to put their job on the line for that?
Right. And so,
besides
but that's been the thing though, is that Nashville, like you come to Nashville, you've got job security, man. If you're like, because it's like they keep it in the family. Yeah. And I think that that's been like the nice and, warm and fuzzy part of it. But I think that, like you said, you got to be a little gangster sometimes. And I think that if you got to be gangster and you have to allow, again, you need that fresh perspective, that fresh set of eyes to come in and be like, look, this is not working. And I think that you as Bill Haslam have to then take whoever you decide to hire for this. You're hiring them because of his vision, that he's put forward and what he wants to do and all of that. Now you have to, as the owner, you have to let him do it.
Yeah.
Let him try it. Like, let him actually execute it, because you can't hire someone for one thing and then not give him the resources or the bandwidth to do that. So again, that's getting ahead of it.
Yeah.
But the point is, I think all of this speaks to the need for more outside voices and to stop recycling the same people.
Yeah, I agree. Josh says he has two thoughts about this. One, it's great that he's willing to change his mind. I do think Bill Haslam, you can disagree with his policies, but I think he's a pretty smart guy as a politician, I mean. And number two, it's even more evident that we need more outside voices in the front office, to echo what Emma is saying there. And then Kevin says a new GM will win over the fans if he just says, here's the plan, and then sticks to it. So again, Barry Trotz may end up doing the thing that this organization needed, which is draft a ton of really good players in GTFOH. Like that might be what this organization needed, was a really savvy drafting organization, and then the shrewd gangster to come in and make the tough moves, cut veterans, trade veterans. And this is the other big one on this, because I think Elliot Friedman floated this on his podcast, and Adam and I touched on it. Roman Josi. It's going to be hard for people to come to grips with this, but I think you and I talked about it during my 10-step plan. It was like step number 9, which is a graceful exit for the fan favorites. And I think I said, maybe not this summer, but next trade deadline, you need to start thinking about trading Roman Josi. And it sounds like, especially, and this is the result of this potential change of heart by the governor, potentially. If you are Stamkos and Marchessault, or I guess O'Reilly, if you count, I don't know if that counts, or Josi, or even Forsberg, who I don't think is in this conversation yet, but could be. If you have a no movement clause and your organization makes clear signals to both the team and inside the building and out that they are into a rebuild here, changing coaches and jettisoning players, you have to be more willing to move to change to waive your no movement clause. If you, we know Marchessault wants out, that's clear. O'Reilly doesn't really have any control over it, but Josi and Stamkos in particular do. And if you are telling Roman Josi and Steven Stamkos, we can't try to win anything right now, which is essentially what you're doing with a rebuild, aren't those guys more willing to move in the summer than you think? And frankly, Roman Josi's contract, 2 years to go at $9 million a year, that should be very palatable for a player of his caliber on the ice and in the locker room. So I think this triggers more than people realize in terms of escalating and accelerating, the rebuild this summer. That could involve more than people think. And I think people need to get prepared for that. I think I said this last year at the end of the season, Emma, when he was hurt. People need to prepare themselves for life beyond Roman Josi. It's hard to do, but they need to do it.
I think it, again, to our earlier conversation about how bad the defense is, like, they need to fix that if they're going to really move on from him. And I'm with you. I think that I think a couple things can be true here. I think, first off, if you look at a guy like Stamkos, he would be one who I would think immediately would come to mind as someone who would be willing to waive his clause, whatever, because he's in obviously a very different situation than Roman Josi is, that he came in here recently with the promise that we're going to try to win right now. Like, that's what got him here. And now that is changing in theory, then it's like, hey, so we're kind of changing the job description for the job we hired you for. So we're going to go another way. And then I could see, again, depends on who the new GM is. And I imagine, like, you're going to work with them. There's going to be certain teams that they'll allow themselves to be traded to. It's like what happened with Ryan McDonough when he came to Nashville a few years ago. It's like there were only a select few places he would go. And so I think that, that is one part of it with Stamkos. Marchessault, we know, wants out. O'Reilly doesn't have control over it. I still think O'Reilly's gone at next year's deadline.
To me, this is what it is. It's Marchessault and Stamkos this summer with a new coach and a new front office. Clean house.
Mhm.
And trade those two guys. Then it's O'Reilly and Josi at the deadline next year, in February of next year. And that's how I feel like you sort of put the final stake in the rebuild and say, no, we're finally doing it. And I think
the thing with Josi, and I know you're not saying this, but I've just, with the rumors that have kind of been floating around, I feel like I just want to clarify this one piece of it, which is that I don't see Josi going to whoever the GM is and saying, I want to trade. I want out. I want to go win.
I
don't think he's going to be the one to initiate that conversation. I think it would have to be the GM that would say, hey, man, here's the deal. And would have to be willing to work with him and, whatever it is to move on to whether it's at the deadline or during the off season. The one thing that I would be concerned about with Josi is his injury history. Like you said, with the 9 million for 2 years, palatable, yes, when he's healthy. And I think that, I just don't know.
I mean,
it's not his fault. You can't predict it, but I'm just saying that his value on the trade market might not be quite what we think it is.
It's hard to make the case that he is a part of the rebuild as a player. It's very easy to make the case that he's a big part of the rebuild as a trade chip. And from an injury standpoint, it just is what it is. Like, you got to hope that he's healthy through the deadline next year. And if that's the case, I imagine there'll be lots of suitors, not the family, but suitors for Roman Josi at the trade deadline. That is like, those players are not available at the trade deadline outside of Quinn Hughes, I guess.
For sure. But I also think that I don't know. I just think that even if he wanted to stay around through the rebuild and was adamant about that, I think there needs to be a shift in the thinking from the front office about his role in the rebuild. Like, if he does want to stay, because this is what happened with right now, Roman Josi is viewed as a core piece. He's one of the centerpieces of this team that when Barry Trotz came in, he's like, I want to build around Josi, Saros, and Forsberg. And that's fine, but he is not getting any younger. So I think now, if you're looking at him being a part of this rebuild, if he is adamant that he wants to stay and he wants to be a part of it, that's fine, but he can't be your guy. He can't be the guy anymore. You have to let him be a complementary piece, a supportive piece now.
And it's why I think Forsberg at 3 years young or 4 years younger, and with more years on the I think 2 more years left on the contract. I think he's got 4 years after this one on the contract at 31 years old, is a part that you do build around. He is a part that is a starting winger on the top line when all these young players become a part of it. Saros is under contract for 7 seasons. He is going to be a part of the rebuild. Josi is a piece that kickstarts it all. Now, if Forsberg at the end of this thing, if they have 2 more bad seasons, let's say, and then all of a sudden they're starting to kind of trend upward in that final year, then maybe you deal Forsberg. But there's also a chance you bring him back on till age 38 because maybe he can keep playing. I think Forsberg is a little premature to make decisions on. Unless you get an offer that is so good, you're getting, a Celebrini, McBedard kind of level prospect or something. Like, unless you're getting something so good that you have to move him, then I think all bets are off. You trade every piece. I don't know what there's like one contract that like we never talk about that I don't know what is they're going to do with, and I don't know how he fits into this whole thing. And unfortunately, it's how we're going to end the show today, and it's sort of how we started the show today. It's sort of how it's happened throughout the course of the show, and that is I don't know what you do with a $7 million cap hit on Brady Shea for the next 5 years. That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one, and I don't know what that looks like. Buyout Shea. I don't want them buying anybody out. I'd rather have him play. If it's going to be bad hockey and you're rebuilding, just let him play. Who cares? So I don't want anybody buying out. But
I also
Maybe you can
would
trade
just
that contract in 2 years from now. I don't know.
But here's the thing that I wanna point out, and again, I'm not defending Shea. See, that's almost exactly what I was gonna say, which is that Shea is very much a product of the system that he plays in,
I
and
think so too.
I watched him play in Carolina. It was a very different defense, very different system they played there. It's very man-to-man defense, and he was really solid at that because Shea is a really good skater. He can keep pace with guys who
Connor
have the puck,
McDavid.
and
Yeah.
he's a big body. He can get in the way. Like, I think he this system that Andrew Burnett is having in play has exposed his flaws, and
Yeah.
no one is arguing that. I'm saying that, yeah, he has not looked good, but I just know that I think that Predators fans have not seen the fully what he's capable of, and I would like to see if presumably they do get a new coach after Andrew Brunette after this year, then I think, I would be willing to give
He
him a
gets
little bit
better.
more
Yeah.
runway.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. How many spots? I know you can only have 3 retention spots for salary, and both Sissons and Ekholm come off the books this year, and so you'll have all 3 of those slots for next year. Which, in case you wanted to trade Stamkos and keep some salary or whatever, you've got 3 slots for that. Duchesne goes from 6.5 to 1.5, but then he's on the books for 3 more seasons at 1.5, and then Kyle Turris, the gift that keeps on giving, still 2 more seasons after this one at $2 million. So is it the same as the buyout or retention? Is it you get 3 slots? Is that correct? Or do you only get 2? Do you know? I do.
I
I'll
think
plead it.
it's
I do
3.
not know.
I
So
think
that
it's
means they
3.
have one. They have one more right now. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just, somebody asked this on the chat as well. Who would you consider buying out? And I think the answer is nobody.
No,
You don't.
yeah,
There's no need to buy anybody out. Like, if it's a bad contract, just keep him and let him play on a bad team. If you're doing
yeah,
the rebuild, like,
yeah, that's fine. I don't think you need to buy Brady Shea out. I wouldn't buy
I agree.
anybody out.
I don't buy anybody out. No,
Yeah.
I'm not doing it. Except for Sinkers, I'd buy all their bourbon. I'd go to their, if I had the money, I'd go buy them out. So check out Sinkers Beverages, everybody. Their sister store, if you're in North Nashville, in Hendersonville, in Goodlettsville, in Gallatin, and Madison, you can go to Bluegrass Beverages. They are over 50 years of serving the community, award-winning as well. But Sinkers Beverages, Bluegrass Beverages, 2 great liquor stores that take care of all your needs. They got THC beverages. They've got non-alcoholic beer. They've got mocktails. They've got all the actual alcohol you might want, whether it's a nice bottle of wine, bottle of champagne, tequila, bourbon, craft beer. They've got those spectacular, good local craft beers you can get, East Nashville Beer Works and Yazoo, and all kinds of good stuff. So, also, if you are in Madison, we're going to be at Yazoo Brewing Company tonight at 6 o'clock for the Nashville SC match, watching against Miami. So we're going to have a bunch of people out there. You're going to have a jersey giveaway, and we're going to have $1 off pints. So if you want to come out and hang out, I'm going to be there basically 6 to 8 today at Yazoo Brewing Company on Wednesday evening. If you're listening, so come check it out. Watch the Miami match. Maybe we can finally beat that messy jerkwad in a game of football. Otherwise, Emma, where can the good people find you?
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingan. I'll share all my work from the hockey news and everywhere else on there.
There you go. Please rate, review, subscribe, thumbs up, notifications turned on the YouTube page. Follow us on socials and tell somebody about our shows. That is how this whole company has been built, is community and listeners and people like you supporting us. So everyone out there listening, please share the product to somebody. Tell somebody about what's going on. Lower Broad Hockey as well. For Emma, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. Go Kraken. Have a good one, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.